okay, so how does owning your own story contribute to healing from the effects of racism and sexual brokenness? And I feel like this whole conversation has been kind of the answer.
Yeah.
But is there anything else that you can encourage maybe somebody listening?
Yeah, I would just say like forgive yourself is the first step. And being able to wash yourself with that of just the truth that God has for you in your life or whatever your story is, being able to say, that was me then, but I have new tools now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm able to walk out my life differently than I did before. And I just think that we talked a little bit about groups earlier. It's important that we show up to groups as a woman of color, as a man of color. It's important that we show up because, like you said very early on in the podcast, representation is huge.
Yes.
And that's how it creates change going forward.
In anything that carries a lot of shame, right? So, I mean, how you're saying representation with sexual addiction, with betrayal. Oh, my husband's a pastor and he had an affair. I can't tell anybody. Or I had an affair with my wife, or I'm looking at porn secretly, or I feel like nobody understands my racial trauma and pain, that we need to be voice pieces. And so if we see a lot of this being spoken about and you have a story that's different and you feel like you're the only one, then that may be an indicator that maybe God's putting it on your heart to be the one that does start the group or does, go forward and go first so other people can follow lead.
Yeah, I would also say to that, take time to own your story. Like, actually intentionally sit down and think about your life and ask for language to be able to verbalize it a certain way. Because I feel like words are powerful. The words we say, the words we receive. And so being able to be patient with yourself and say, okay, what's my story? And how do I want to say it? And what is the message I want to give? Because trust me, you can give the message of, I have sexual brokenness and I am at a disposition because of my skin color, and it can actually fuel the wrong things. And it can actually make you an angry person bent on like vengeance. And that's not where we want to be. We want to be in a place where our pain makes us softer and that we are able to articulate it in a way that says what we actually want people to hear. Like, I don't want you to just hear that I'm broken. I actually want you to hear that I'm healing. And so just taking that time to get language and not being afraid of your story and just really embracing it. I think that's what I would say.
Yeah, Heather, that was in one of our, is it in our Unraveled material where we talk about, moms can raise secure children if they've processed their, help me with that.
Yeah, so that moms who can tell a coherent narrative of their trauma can raise secure children.
Wow.
And it's something like 75% based on research.
That takes work,
so
right?
good. That's so good.
It takes group. It takes work. It takes community. It takes getting outside of our own filters. So that's why group is so important.
Right, because a group gives you a place to process in safety.
Yeah.
So when you're able to process in safety, you begin to go, oh, okay. And then you start writing stuff down. You start journaling because it's like, and then also you begin to rewrite the lies. Like, wow, today in group, I was safe. Today I shared my story and someone acknowledged it. And so like as leaders in groups, you have got to really look, like as a leader, I would say to the leaders that are leading groups currently right now is to be careful. Care for the like not careful like, oh, I'm going to spill something, but like be careful, be full of care for the people you're around.
Dang, that's a bar.
And just know that you're helping them get a safe space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved how you said that our pain should make us softer.
Yeah.
Because I think that is so true. And I think that it also helps to develop empathy because as a white woman, I am not ever going to experience racism. I'm just not. But because I have a really good friend who helps to
Right.
educate me.
It's me, for
And
those of you listening.
yes, I know. But for years of just being able to walk out life together and to be able to empathize with not only Ashley's story, but just even current things that she experiences and raise that awareness of just to change my perspective. Because like Emmanuel, you said earlier, I don't think I will ever go into a room and have to read the room the same way that Black people have to. I just won't ever. And because I've lived my whole entire life in Oregon. So, you know what I mean? But just
Right.
being able to raise that awareness. And we even will do trainings together. We went through a training recently called The Trauma of Racism. And just because it's so important for even white people to have an understanding of what it looks like for Black people, because it's different. There's no other way to say it. It just is different. And we can learn and be empathetic and validate what people go through. And it's a great part of the human experience, I think.
Well,
so,
and how healing is it when you don't feel like you have to keep defending yourself, explaining yourself, and you do have somebody that's a white friend or a white leader? Because I went through healing my trauma of my racism through pure desire. It wasn't until I went through the material here that I realized that's a core piece. And I would tell it from the stage as part of my story, but that it was getting in group that I'm like connecting all the dots. And then that enabled me to heal my trauma with my mom. So there'd be times I would text Heather and say, she just made a comment on my hair, or she just, and Heather would just be able to say, that's coming from her trauma, and you can just respond in this way, and you don't have to carry that. And I was able to learn how to respond to my mom and say, I don't like when you make comments about my hair like that, and it makes me feel sad that you won't just accept my hair the way God made it, and I don't want to go to lunch with you anymore. And that was such a different response for me to give to my mom, rather than shutting down, internalizing it, yelling at her. And then she was made with the choice of, I either have to stop talking about my daughter that way, or I will lose relationship. And luckily she chose to keep relationship and grow and change. And we have such a good relationship now. But when I started wearing my hair curly, okay, I'm going to my mom's. It's going to be the first time she's going to make a comment. And my mom made a good comment. But I had my friends who were actually white, all of them, encouraging me and letting me process. So just because you're white doesn't mean that there's not a place, to help heal the brokenness of racism in our society. And it doesn't mean you have to go out there and lead a rally. It could be simple.
You're not responsible for the weight of everybody's hurt.
It could just be as simple as being a good friend, a good listener, not adding any microaggression insults to somebody. Just,